Alright people, so welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our current affairs lecture series. Now the current affairs that we are going to cover in today's lecture is related to the subject of social issues. So all the social issues related current affairs from the past 1 week, yes 1 week, shall be covered in this particular lecture. Now I say this every time, I'm going to repeat it in this lecture as well. Well, make this lecture series a part of your daily routine. It should be a daily habit of yours. It won't take much of your time. 30 minutes of watching the lecture and just 15 minutes of revising it from the notes. That's about it. Total of 45 minutes. But if you make these 45 minutes a part of your daily routine till your exams, well, you will secure at least 50% of your paper, whether it's prelims or mains. Current affairs are that dominant. So make sure you make it a daily habit. Okay? All right then. Enough of the introduction. Let's straight away dive into the lecture. So let's begin. So current affairs, social issues, July part 1, and let's take a look at the topics that we shall cover in today's lecture. Okay, so topics to be covered. So number one topic is structural dimension of corruption. Basically, many people, many social scientists have theorized that corruption is not a moral issue, it's a systemic issue. So what do you mean by this, and how can we remove corruption in India? We'll talk about this. Then there was some article about denotified and nomadic tribes, that how they are still being exploited. So we'll talk about this. And in the end, we'll talk about Jiyo Parsi central scheme. Parsi, a religious denomination in India, and Jiyo Parsi basically means Parsi population is declining. So government came out with a scheme so that their population numbers do not dwindle. Okay, so what is this scheme? What developments have been made in this scheme? New developments. We'll talk about all these things. So these are the three news items that we shall zero in our attention on. So let's start discussing them one by one. Starting with topic number 1, and that is structural dimension of corruption. You see, the thing is that many people consider corruption to be a moral issue. Yes, a person is immoral because he is involved in corruption. But many social scientists have theorized that it's not about individual personalities. It's how the system is designed. If your system is designed in such a way that it incentivizes corruption, then everyone, no matter how moral a person is, well, it would be very difficult for them to escape corruption. So it's not, I mean, it can be a moral issue. Of course, there are so many upright officers also. But more than being an issue of morality, it's the issue of systemic design, or the design of your political system, administrative system. Okay? And these theories are, well, they carry some weight. So what are these theories? We'll talk about this, okay? And we'll also talk about the institutional architecture to prevent corruption in India, and what more we can do so that corruption is not an issue in India. Because despite those institutions, corruption is still a very big problem in India. We all are aware of it, right? So what more can be done? Let's talk about this. This particular news item is important from the perspective of mains, so pay close attention, okay? So structural dimension of corruption, okay? So what was in the news? In public administration, corruption has evolved from simple low-level bribery into a structural crisis. This includes non-transparent political funding, political parties and their funding mechanisms, administrative bottlenecks, regulatory capture that shields corporate monopolies. So it's not just political funding, black money is involved over there. Well, it's involved in administration, bureaucrats, and it's also involved in, well, corporates, because corporates are the ones who bribe public officials to get certain favors, right? Now, the legacy view of corruption, the view about corruption, I mean, how people viewed corruption. They considered corruption to be a problem of few bad apples. There are few bad apples in every society, so corruption is just a consequence of that, right? It was considered a moral issue, ethical issue. But modern social scientists consider it to be a structural issue. Your system is designed, your political system, your administrative system, everything in India is designed in such a way that it incentivizes corruption. And mind you, it's not just India. China has a huge problem of corruption because their system is also designed to promote corrupt officials, or to promote the feeling of, not just the feeling, but to promote this behavior of corruption in all public officials. Okay. Now first let's talk about the theory. Okay. What is the theoretical bedrock of this? Do you know this view that corruption is a systemic issue was not just given by Western social scientists. It was also given by Kautilya in his Arthashastra. Okay, we'll talk about this. But first, let's talk about the theoretical foundation of this view that corruption is a systemic issue, structural issue. I'm so sorry about this. Yeah. So number one is Robert Klitgard formula. Robert Klitgard says that corruption is directly proportional to two things. Okay, monopoly. If a particular officer, public official, or bureaucrat or politician has monopoly over certain things. For example, there is a bureaucrat who has a monopoly over giving pollution licenses. Okay, he is responsible. Nobody can question his decision. He gives pollution licenses. He's the one and all authority. Okay, so it is monopoly plus discretion. There are no rules in place. It's completely up to the decision of that bureaucrat. If there are certain rules in place in public offices, so that bureaucrats have to follow those rules, they can't use their own mind to allocate licenses. I'm just giving an example. That is discretion minus accountability. So if there is no accountability, then, well, corruption would get a boost. So minus accountability means lack of accountability. There is lack of questioning. Okay, people, public officials can behave the way they want with impunity. If there is lack of accountability, that boosts corruption. So basically, Robert Klitgard says, first of all, it is a structural issue. And there are three variables in your structure that incentivize corruption: monopoly, discretion, and lack of accountability. Now let's move to Kautilya. So you know what Kautilya said? Kautilya said that just like, he gave a quote, that just like it is impossible to know that the fish which is residing in water is drinking that water or not, similarly, it's impossible to know that a public official who is all in all in charge of public funds is corrupt or not, is siphoning off from those public funds or not. Okay, so it is impossible, it is really difficult to check. Therefore, he said that systems should be designed in such a way that there are multiple checks and balances. Kautilya laid so much focus on accountability that he said without accountability, without checks and balances, all systems would be corrupt. This was his view in Arthashastra. So even Kautilya called corruption to be a systemic issue. Make sense? Okay. Now, dimensions of structural corruption in India. Okay, so there are three dimensions. We have talked about these three dimensions in introduction part as well. The number one dimension is political domain. There is political corruption with respect to funding of political parties. A lot of black money finds its way into political parties' funds. So this is there. Okay, and political parties are funded with the promise of some favors once that political party comes to power. Okay, so this is there. Then there is the dimension of bureaucratic arena, public officials. Complex red tape and extensive human bottlenecks extort speed money. Give me this much, take a license, like that. And market interconnect. This is also known as crony capitalism. Very rich businessmen. Okay, generally it is considered that free markets are, well, meritocratic. Free markets favor open competition. But very rich businessmen try to rig the system. Because they are very rich, they have deep pockets, so they bribe public officials to extort some favors. Okay, so it's not a level playing field for all businesses. Small businesses are at a disadvantageous position because big businesses, they bribe their way to more favors. Okay, so this is there, market interconnect. This is also known as crony capitalism, the immoral nexus between capitalists and public officials. This is crony capitalism. So this is there. Now, this is what is happening in India. Has India created certain institutions to combat corruption? Of course we have. What are those institutions? Well, we had Central Vigilance Commission for Public Officials. It is a statutory body created by this law. It functions as the apex integrity institution free from executive control. It oversees vigilance administration of central ministries, supervises CBI, and conducts investigations as per Prevention of Corruption Act. Then there is CAG, which keeps a track of public funds. It's a constitutional body, Article 148 of the Constitution. Okay, it's the guardian of public purse. That's the tag given to CAG. Okay, remember this and use it in your answers. Guardian of public purse. It basically audits government spending. Then Lokpals and Lokayuktas, they are also a statutory body, functions as a statutory anti-corruption ombudsman authorized to investigate corruption allegations against high-level public functionaries, including MPs. So these are the three major agencies. It includes CBI also, but CBI functions under CVC. Clear? But still, despite these powerful institutions, corruption is still an issue in India. Why? Well, there are some structural bottlenecks. First of all, secondary extortion trap. This is being witnessed. Now, what is this? Remember this phrase, it's a keyword, use it in your answers. You know, people thought that with the arrival of DBT, direct benefit transfer, subsidies directly into your bank account, well, the middlemen public officials, they would be shunted out, and therefore they won't have the authority to extract money from poor people. Okay, because the middlemen have been shunted out, and now government directly drops money into your bank account. But the thing is that government has a list of beneficiaries list in whose bank accounts money would be dropped. And these beneficiary lists are prepared by public officials. And sometimes these public officials demand bribes from people if they want their name to be included in these beneficiaries lists. This is secondary extortion trap. In fact, if they refuse to give money, they will drop their name from that list, even if that person is deserving. Okay, that was witnessed a lot in Bengal. I mean, it was being discussed during Bengal elections also. So this is there. Then weak whistleblower safeguards. Remember what Klitgard said? Accountability. Now, for good accountability, you need whistleblowers. Someone who sees corruption and raises his voice, his or her voice, so that media attention is garnered over that place and that person is reprimanded. But in India, whistleblowers are not safe. When they blow whistle, when they remove the lid from corruption or corrupt system, sometimes, well, many people have died also because of that. So there is weak whistleblower safeguards. In fact, we have Whistleblower Protection Act, but its enforcement is weak. And then post-mortem enforcement void. The problem is that, well, we talked about CAG. CAG is important, but CAG does audit. What do you mean by audit? That once spending has been done, then CAG comes into the picture. It doesn't come into the picture beforehand. So it is not a preventive organization. Once corruption is done, then it comes into the picture. We need someone to come before the process of corruption, okay, so that it can be prevented. We want a preventive system, not a curative, later, post-mortem system. Okay, so this is an issue. Now, there are some way forwards. You can use AI to check corruption in banking systems. Okay, introducing peer-driven institutional integrity score. You know, when you use Zomato and Swiggy, there is rating system. All these delivery boys, you rate them. Similarly, if citizens can rate public officials, that would be a great thing. You went to your MC office and you did not like the behavior of certain public officials, you can rate them online. That would be a great thing to introduce accountability. And codifying strict independent transfer boards. Okay, sometimes, well, the corruption comes from the politicians themselves and they force public officials to do that corrupt deed. And if they refuse, they are transferred. So you need a proper transfer system also. So this is the way forward that is being suggested, right? That's about it. And now let's quickly shift our focus to next news item, and that is denotified and nomadic tribes. Okay. You know, there were certain communities in India during British rule which were branded as criminal communities. So the Britishers branded them as criminal tribes, which means that if any child takes birth in that community, the Britishers would consider that child also criminal because he took birth in that community. An entire community was called criminal. Okay, they basically also branded them as criminal. Most of these tribes were nomadic tribes, and the Britishers said that they are habitual of crimes. They consider their value system is such that these crimes are considered good, therefore their community is criminal. Okay, now that was a very bad system, and these people were exploited. They were forced to verify their identity at every police station. They had to visit a police station every month. Okay, they would be frequently arrested. If there is a robbery in a nearby place, these people would be arrested on first suspicion. Okay, now this is not right. Okay, you can't consider a person criminal based on their birth, right? Now these tribes were called criminal tribes. But once India got independent, India realized that this was a discriminatory practice. So India denotified those tribes. They were branded as criminal tribes. India denotified them. Denotified means that you won't be notified as criminal tribes anymore. That is why they were called denotified tribes. In Hindi, they were called Vimukta Jatis. Now, these tribes, though they were demotified as soon as India got independent, well, they are still suffering. There are still problems that are faced by these communities. Okay, so what should we do to uplift these communities? Though they have had a very bad historical past, British past, colonial past, but still their plight hasn't seen any improvement. So what should we do now? Let's talk about this issue. Okay. So denotified and nomadic tribes. Most of the nomadic tribes, those who do not settle in one place, were called criminal only. During programmatic multi-sectoral reviews executed by Ministry of Social Justice, technical audits highlighted a significant backlog in the deployment of welfare benefits that were due for these denotified tribes. So there were certain welfare benefits that were to be given to these denotified tribes. They were not even given. This was as per the audit conducted by Ministry of Social Justice. Now, first of all, we need to know about denotified tribes as to why do they need welfare benefits. Well, their position is bad because of historical roots, historical exploitation. The reasons why their position is bad, well, the reasons go back in history, British India history. Okay, so what are those historical roots? Historical genesis, the colonial wound and born criminals. These communities were given criminal tag. If you're born in this community, you are considered to be criminal. That is really bad. So the Britishers enacted Criminal Tribes Act in 1871. As per that act, many nomadic tribes were branded criminals. They were frequently arrested. They had to report to a police station every month. In case there is any crime committed, the first suspicion would go to these tribes. This was really bad. The purpose was systemic control logic. That was the purpose behind the British system. Okay, because the British thought that nomadic communities are difficult to control because they do not settle at one place. Because they do not settle at one place, well, you cannot tax them, you cannot catch them. It is difficult to control them. So that is why, this was another reason. That is why many of these nomadic tribes were branded criminal. By branding them criminal, it was easier for the colonial police to control them. Okay. Now, as soon as India got independent, well, these tribes were denotified. Okay, they were not criminal tribes anymore. They were denotified. This law was repealed. Okay, a committee was formed to identify these tribes called the Iyengar Committee. Based on the recommendations of this Iyengar Committee, these tribes were denotified. But the thing is, some provisions of Criminal Tribes Act are still being used on these nomadic tribes, these denotified tribes. How? Despite denotifying these tribes, certain state governments launched or enacted Habitual Offenders Act. Those people who are habitual offenders, who commit crime repeatedly. And some of these tribes were put under this Habitual Offenders Act. And the same process was, well, continued with them in certain states, not all. Clear? So this is the thing. Though now situation has improved. So DNT administrative barrier. Now, what do you mean by administrative barrier? As to why is it difficult to provide welfare to these DNTs? This bridge is very difficult. Why it is difficult to give them welfare? First of all, some of these denotified tribes are classified as OBCs, some are SCs, some are classified as STs. Different communities, different groups have different schemes. So first is classification anomaly. Okay. The other is document invisibility. Because these tribes are nomadic, they don't have a proper fixed property deed. Okay. Constant seasonal migration leaves them without permanent Aadhaar or voter card also. Okay, these are communities, they don't have an Aadhaar card because Aadhaar card requires proof of residence. They don't have any residence, they move throughout the year, like Banjaras or Gujjar Bakarwals in Kashmir, right? Then legal and land deficit. Lacking land records, they are logged out from state housing benefits. We have this Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana and many other yojanas. For that, we need property deeds, but that is not there with these tribes because they are nomadic, right? So this is the problem. And this is the reason why, despite good intentions, government's welfare is not able to reach these denotified tribes. And that is why this audit revealed that most of the funds have remained unspent. Okay. Now, what is the institutional architecture? Basically, various commissions and committees were formed to suggest reforms or welfare of these communities. There was Renke Commission in 2008. Okay, it gave certain recommendations. Then Idate Commission in 2018, it gave certain recommendations. Then Development and Welfare Board for DNTs, they gave certain recommendations. Now, this table is shared in your notes, so do take a look at this. Okay, remember these three commissions. It will be easier for you if you remember these commissions, and if there is any question in your mains examination with respect to denotified tribes, well, your answer will stand out if you name drop these commissions. Okay, now what is the way forward? Executing a centralized cross-state biometric survey, issuing them different nomadic ID cards, which doesn't require proof of residence. Okay, instead of Aadhaar, issue them a different ID cards, introducing mobile Anganwadis and school loops. Okay, tent schools and tent hospitals that will move along with these communities. Codifying a fast-track DNT, Land Deed Protection Act. Okay, give them land deeds wherever they settle. Even if they settle for 3 months, give them a land deed on public lands. Clear? So this is the way forward that is being suggested, right? And now let's quickly shift our focus to last news item of the day, and that is Jiyo Parsi Central Scheme. Now let's finish this topic very quickly. The thing is, there is this community called the Parsi community. Their religion is Zoroastrianism. Okay, they originally came from Iran. At least that's what they believe. Okay, and they mostly reside in different parts of the country, but they are basically, their population is mostly concentrated on the western coast of India, but they are found all over the country. You are familiar with Parsis. Okay, now they are a highly successful community, economically successful, politically successful, legally successful. Some great names like Sam Manekshaw, Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw, who won us 1971 war. Well, he was there, and there are various famous lawyers. So, I mean, Tatas, the big business empires like Tatas, they're all Parsis. Now, the thing is, there is one problem that this Parsi community is facing, and that problem is basically their declining population numbers. Their population is declining extremely fast. Now, why is their population declining? We'll talk about this. But to protect their population, well, government launched a central sector scheme. Central sector scheme means 100% it is funded by central government. No state government funding is there. Well, government launched a scheme called Jiyo Parsi scheme. Under this scheme, well, we are trying to increase their birth rate, number one. Plus, some poor Parsis would be provided medical facilities so that, well, survival of their children increases, birth rate increases. If their birth rate will improve, well, their population would also rise. Currently, their population is, well, declining. Okay, so in this topic, we'll try to understand why their population is declining and what measures have been taken by the government in this Jiyo Parsi scheme. Okay, very quickly, let's finish this. So, Jiyo Parsi Central Scheme. Now, the reason why this scheme was in the news was because, well, this scheme was launched by Ministry of Minority Affairs way back. But now the government is introducing more tech initiatives. Earlier, a lot of paperwork was involved in the implementation of this scheme. Now, government is going more tech, app-based. So, there are various apps, web portals through which this scheme would be implemented. That's why it was in the news. That is not important for us. What is important for us is, number one, what demographic challenge this community is facing. Okay, so what is the crisis? Negative natural growth rate. The Parsi community faces a severe demographic deficit. According to National Registry logs, for every 150 births recorded in a year, okay, community registers roughly 600 deaths naturally. So in 1 year, 150 births are taking place, 600 deaths are taking place. Definitely every year, the population declines by 450 on average. So, and mind you, this is birth rate, okay, per 1,000 population. So population is definitely declining. There is a severe deficit, okay. The Indian Parsi population has shrunk from approximately 1,15,000 in 1941 to 57,000. It has halved. Okay, and what are the reasons? First of all, low total fertility rate. Parsi women marry really late, sometimes past their reproductive age. So lower total fertility rate, way below than replacement levels. Sometimes they don't marry at all. Okay, marriage trend is declining. And the other problem is lack of religious conversion. If a Parsi person marries outside their community, their children are not considered Parsis, pure enough. And this is especially true for women. If Parsi women marry outside, they marry a Hindu man, Muslim man, Christian man, their kids are not considered Parsis. So how would their population increase? So lack of religious conversion is also there. So this is the basic reason, socio-cultural drivers. Okay, so it's not that their birth rate is declining because of there is death rate, infant mortality rate. Their birth rate is not declining because of very high infant mortality rate or maternal mortality rate. These people are pretty well to do. It's their cultural issue that their population is declining. Now, about Jiyo Parsi scheme, so it is 100% centrally funded. It's central sector scheme. What does it do? It has 3 pillars: medical assistance, funds high-end fertility treatments, because most of these Parsi women, they take a decision to bear a child very late in their life. Sometimes, well, beyond a certain age, it's difficult to get pregnant. So they are given free IVF facilities, okay, IVF pregnancy, health of community, directly monthly stipends for childcare and dependent elderly care. Money is given by the government. And well, advocacy, that marry more, have more children, awareness generation. That's happening. Clear? Now, this is the problem. This column, the structural vector, is the problem. This is the situation of Parsi community before 2024 when the scheme was launched. And then this is after. How these tech initiatives are beneficial. Basically, the tech initiatives have been taken in Jiyo Parsi scheme. Before the tech initiatives, this was the situation. After the tech initiatives, this is the situation. Right? So, well, take a look at this table also. It's given in your notes. But in the end, well, you will see this in your notes. Policy paradox. Though the government is using technology to solve a crisis, the problem is more traditional. Okay, the problem is cultural. If the Parsis are not ready to have children, what would your subsidy for IVF do? So the problem is more cultural, and that is why this advocacy and counseling would would yield more dividends than the other monetary incentives. Okay, so this is the paradox. Okay, government is doing a lot, using technology, doing state-of-the-art things, but the issue is more cultural, right? And that would be all. With that, we conclude today's session. So thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. But it will add more value if you're number 1, consistent and regular with this lecture series, and number 2, you revise this lecture from the notes. The notes are on our Telegram channel, and the link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section below. So make sure you check it out. All right then. On that note, I shall take your leave with the promise of seeing you again with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.